Main point, Caroline Fenton, is a little bit of Monday night football fun. I can talk. You can tell it was a late night. We'll start with the first game of the doubleheader. The Buccaneers take down the Texans, and I'm telling you, this game had it all. Like Stefan from SNL. This game had some big plays. This game had some big defense. And most importantly, this game had epic ending. This is what we love. Houston falls to 0-2.
This game had Baker Mayfield doing a somersault.
It did. And all of us saying, Baker, what are you doing? Like we just talked about quarterback injuries. Like let's look at Baker for a second, because Baker, man, was delightful. But I'm telling you, Caroline, I'm just looking at it saying, protect yourself, brother. Like, protect yourself. I know you want to take down CJ Gardner-Johnson, but come on, protect yourself. I was nervous.
It's fair to be nervous, but I think the nerves that you have about Baker Mayfield, maybe what we're all nervous about with Baker Mayfield, putting his body on the line and, basically picking himself up off the field just to talk some smack to CJ Gardner-Johnson, like those things, that fire from Baker Mayfield, I think is also what makes him great. Maybe his potential downfall is also what his greatest superpower is. And I look at Baker Mayfield and the performance that he had last night. And he did the thing that I think we talk about the best quarterbacks in the league doing. The Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows, the Lamar Jacksons, the Patrick Mahomes, so on and so forth. He elevated his team around him, and almost it felt like single-handedly at times willed his team to victory. Look, Chris Godwin is not out there on the field. They just got a new offensive coordinator. Liam Cohen is now in Jacksonville. There is a lot of turnover in Jacksonville. You bring in Emeka Egbuka. That's obviously a wonderful new pass-catching weapon for Baker Mayfield, but change at least in the offense. And Baker is still able to find ways to win football games. That's what great quarterbacks do. Even when the Houston Texans basically were gift-wrapped 10 points from their special teams, Baker was still able to find a way to win that football game. So I get it. I hear you on, lower the shoulder, maybe slide every once in a while. That the grit and the toughness that he plays with is enough to make anybody just a little bit nervous about what that could mean about Baker Mayfield's availability for the greater part of 17 weeks. But I say, isn't that also what makes him great? That IDGAF attitude, that chip on his shoulder, the way he goes out there and plays with absolute reckless abandon when he goes into maniac mode. Isn't that is what is so fun to watch? Isn't that what makes Baker Baker? And now Baker, I think we can confidently say, is a franchise quarterback in Tampa Bay.
I mean, the defining moment for me that answered any questions anybody could ever have on Baker. Not that I had any left, but when the Texans scored late in this game, it took a 19-14 lead. They went for two. They didn't get it, right? So they take a 19-14 lead. My immediate thought was, yep, you left Baker too much time. Because they did. They left Baker the opportunity to get the ball back. And to think that that's where we are on Baker and that's where we are in this Bucs offense. And they did. They drove right down the field, which then leads to sort of the flip side of this, though, because I think if we're being fair here for a second, Caroline, like I'm looking at a Texans team that's now 0-2. And I'm looking at D'Amico Ryans, who's known for his defense, and how much of the broadcast did they spend talking to us about the fact that they have two elite pass rushers on that defensive line that can get after it. Derek Stingley Jr. in the backfield. Like the pieces are there. And I watched the Texans just find a way to melt away in this football game. And I kept looking around thinking, man, what the hell are we doing? Like when you start talking about the cornerstones of successful football teams, don't the Texans have the majority of those cornerstones all the way across on both sides of the ball? There's certainly enough talent for the Texans to be winning football games. And now they fall to 0-2 in a division where the Colts have surprised some people starting 2-0. Like I feel like the Texans are dug into a hole, and some of that feels self-inflicted. I wonder if maybe some of the shine has rubbed off on D'Amico and the Texans and part of what we expect from them, because it looks like they find ways to lose football games right now.
Going into this season, and I still think I can at least hold on to a little bit of hope, but it is dwindling. But going into this season, I had hope that 2023 CJ Stroud was still in there. That maybe 2024 last season was just a sophomore slump and the Texans were riddled with injuries, and this year was a get back and get right kind of year. But through two games, I don't really have anything to base that off of other than just pure unadulterated hope. because CJ Stroud looks like a shell of the offensive rookie of the year that we saw in 2023. That somebody explain to me why we continue to run the football with Nick Chubb when he, at this point in his career, after 2 brutal injuries, is not going to be the cornerstone of any offense in the National Football League. I don't understand why at times the offense looks so incredibly stagnant. Look, the Bucs defense is good. It's not elite. It's no defense that should hold an offense with as many pieces as the Houston Texans offense has to 266 total yards. It's inexplicable to me, Fitz. And, I think in sports, credit and blame is incredibly important. You need to know who to give credit to, who to pay, who to invest into, and you need to know who to give the blame to. So at the end of the day, whenever there are changes that need to be made, you know who needs to be eliminated in order to make those changes. I don't know who to blame for this Texans offense. But when you look around and you see as much talent as there is, Nico Collins was a really, a wide receiver that I think that we had a lot to feel confident in. I mean, he was incredible in 2023 before he went down with that injury last season. You bring in Woody Marks from USC and Mississippi State. You draft a pair of wide receivers. Like, you're investing into talent offensively when the talent is there. At least we think it's there, especially with your young quarterback in CJ Stroud, and you fall short and your offense is stagnant and you can only put up really 9 points because essentially 10 of those points came from special teams, like I just said. So you essentially just put 9 points up against a good, not great defense. There's no one I can point to other than the coaching staff. The talent's there, the coaching's not.
And of those, when you talk about the points that came in, one was a right on the line. Oh my God, just an incredible catch by Nico. Like, I don't want to take anything away from that, but nothing was easy. And as you talk, I just keep thinking that at some level, when we look right now at the Texans, I think CJ Stroud has become the Macarena. Like, CJ Stroud right now looks like he's a hell of a lot closer to being a one-hit wonder than he is to being who we thought he was going to be. And
I was wondering where you're going with that.
Well, you're welcome. Hey, Macarena. No, I just think that it's some of this, we have to look at what we saw year one and then try and figure out what it actually means, the Baja Man. There is a level for me of, like, as great as Who Let the Dogs Out was, getting another Who Let the Dogs Out, not all that easy, right? Like, there is some level of what we saw from year one for CJ was historic. Our own Frank Schwab said at the time it was the best rookie season he'd ever seen from any quarterback. And I consider Frank to be one of the best historians of football I've ever worked with. So you think about how good CJ was his rookie year. Where's that gone? Because I mentioned earlier that at the end of the game, I thought, man, you let Baker too much time. There was never a point in this game where I thought, man, you're taking on CJ. You got to put more up. CJ's going to figure this out. Like, CJ Stroud right now just feels, in this offense, in this moment with this Texans team, he just feels like a guy. He doesn't feel like the guy anymore. He doesn't feel like he belongs in the same stratosphere of conversation of the way we talk about some of the other elite quarterbacks in the AFC. And that in and of itself, I think, is jarring. That in and of itself means the Texans got to look in the mirror and figure out what to do to get the most out of CJ, and also what responsibility they have for turning him into, I think at this point, a one-hit wonder. And part of that's the line play, part of that's the system. But, like, no matter how we got here, how many people today are sitting there saying, oh, damn, next week we got to play the Texans? I don't know. That's real.
Yeah. I mean, if 2 years ago me would have said this, I would have sounded like a big fat dumb doofus. But today, I think it is the clear and obvious take that if I am building a brand new football team, and my options at quarterback are Baker Mayfield or CJ Stroud, I am taking Baker Mayfield every single day and twice on Sundays. That Baker Mayfield has cemented himself, I think, as one of those guys that, look, it's 4th and 10. You need to score. The clock is winding down. Baker's got it. Baker's got it. And I don't think he is Josh Allen. I don't think he is Lamar Jackson, but that is the kind of Josh Allen-esque, Lamar Jackson-esque kind of feeling that we get from those elite quarterbacks. Again, I'm not saying he's in that tier, but we saw kind of glimpses of that last night. That's what I want in my starting quarterback. When I wake up on a Sunday and I turn on a Houston Texans game, I don't see that from CJ Stroud. I don't see that pop. I don't see that sizzle. I don't see that explosiveness offensively. And I think if the Houston Texans want to be a playoff team, there has to be some changes that are made. Because if the playoffs were tomorrow, the Texans are not a playoff team. At this point right now, through 2 games, now just through 2 games, the Texans do not look like a playoff team. In that division, the Colts are a far better team through 2 games. They have looked like a much more explosive, competitive team than the Houston Texans have.
There's no doubt. Like right now today, if we had to pick based on what we've seen this year, the Colts look like they're going to win the South, and the Texans look like they're going to watch their playoffs like we do on their TV at home. I mean, I think that's a
Cancun on 3
statement. And 2 years ago, if you'd have gone to anybody and said, hey, you can start your franchise today with Baker or with CJ, who would you pick? When we were watching that rookie season 2 years ago, the answer was clear. The answer is equally clear now. It's just clear in a very different direction. And if your answer is the offensive coordinator around him or the offensive system around him just isn't good enough, blah, 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 I hear a little of that. But let's remember, last night, I'm looking at Twitter X react to the Bucs saying, oh, man, their offensive coordinator calling a great game. This is another great coach in waiting. Well, Canales has a job because of Baker. Liam Cohen has a job because of Baker. Baker Mayfield is the coach maker at this point, and that means something too. So no matter what system they want to put Baker in over the last 3 years, he continues to cook. So congratulations to the Bucs, big win. The Texans are going to have to try and figure out how they can move forward. We will continue to move forward. There was another Monday night game. We'll react to it later. Give me some time, people. I need some time. In the meantime, all of this quarterback news from yesterday, injuries everywhere. You need a quarterback. You need a quarterback. You need a quarterback. We'll figure out who should go where next.
Now, we do not want to make light of the injuries, the slew of injuries that have come out in the NFL over the last couple of days, but it does seem like the Spider-Man meme adequately describes JAYDEN DANIELS, JJ McCarthy, and Joe Burrow. They're all looking around at each other, pointing at each other like, you have an injury, you have an injury, you have an injury. Poor Brock Purdy didn't even get an invitation to the party because he also has been dealing with an injury, which begs the question, which teams, Fitzy, should stand pat with their current quarterback situation, and which teams might be forced to make a change, go out, look at the potential trade market for a quarterback that could come in, could use their services while their starting quarterback is out. Let's start in Cincinnati. Jake Browning has proven to be a really solid backup. That Joe Burrow has been kind of an injury-prone guy over the last couple of years. He's been in, he's been out. Jake Browning has had to come in several instances, and for the most part, he's been a reliable backup. He can come in, he can get the ball to the hands of his playmakers. So, with Joe Burrow out for about 3 months with that turf toe surgery, should the Cincinnati Bengals stand pat with Jake Browning, or should they start to dip their toe into the quarterback market?
I really wanted you to Shakespearean to make a move or not to make a move. That is the question. And the answer
to quarterback or not to quarterback.
That's good. I like that. We'll keep workshopping it. Totally. No, I don't think the Bengals can make a move here. I don't think they need to make a move here. Part of it is, wins above replacement. What do they actually have on that roster? What do they feel is good on that roster from the quarterback position? They came into this year believing Jake Browning could be the answer. And, there's two different ways to take all of this. In my mind, I think it's effective drafting. As much as we've talked this year about particular people you may have heard of that were drafted in the 4th or 5th round, I think it makes sense to draft a backup quarterback in the draft. Somebody that is not there to push your starter, is just somebody that's going to live in your system year in and year out. There's value to that to me. Browning has been in this system for a minute, and I know it wasn't necessarily pretty against the Jags, but they did get a win. So this is where Zach Taylor needs to earn his money with somebody that they felt comfortable going into the season with. So I don't think there's a big need to make a massive change simply because I'm not sure there's anybody they can bring in that would learn this offense, that would execute this offense better than somebody that's been in this offense for a minute. So I'm Team Browning. I'm Team Browning leading the Bengals, surprisingly, keeping them alive at least through the portion of it, and then seeing where it goes from there. What about you?
Jake Browning's great for a couple weeks. That's what a backup quarterback should do, right? You can come in for a couple of weeks while your starting quarterback needs to, mend whatever injury is ailing them. Jake Browning is not a solution for 3 months. Jake Browning cannot be that, or should not rather be that solution until mid to late December. At that point, if Joe Burrow comes back and if he's 100% and if he's able to execute at a high enough level to keep them in this thing, well, does Jake Browning do enough to do exactly that? Keep the Bengals in the conversation. Because if you have Jake Browning for the next 3 months, there is no guarantee. There's no guarantee in football, but there's no guarantee that you're going to be in a position where Joe Burrow can come back and continue to win you games and keep you in that conversation. And I think the expectation is in Cincinnati is to make the playoffs. Of course, expectations change based off of injuries and what happens throughout the course of a 17-game season. But the expectation is to make the playoffs. To miss the playoffs 2 years in a row, I think, is a massive disappointment. So if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, I know I'm without Joe Burrow for the next 3 months. I know how big of a drop-off there is between Joe Burrow and a high-end backup, which is what I think Jake Browning is. If I'm the Bengals, I go out and I get Kirk Cousins. You mentioned a quarterback that can't come in and learn the offense. Well, Kirk Cousins comes from the Kevin O'Connell school of quarterbacking. Where is the Kevin O'Connell offense based in? It's the Sean McVay offense. Where did Zach Taylor come from? Sean McVay. So they all come from the same tree of coaching. It's the same kind of system that Kirk Cousins can come into. And obviously he's a veteran. He's done this plenty of times, but it's an offense that he's familiar with. If you give me Jake Browning or Kirk Cousins as my option as a starting quarterback for the next 3 months, I don't feel great about either of them. But I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins has proven to be a guy that can win you football games. Is he elite? No, he's not, especially not at this point in his career. But I don't think Kirk Cousins would be coming in this situation and assuming that he would be stealing the job from Joe Burrow. He's, I would say, a more high-end option at that position to get you through the slog that's going to be the next 3 months for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Right player, wrong team. Kirk Cousins should be traded by one of these teams desperate for a quarterback, but you just mentioned he's familiar with Kevin O'Connell's offense. He should go back to KOC, Minnesota. I mean, we look at JJ McCarthy and what they should do right now. It's only 2 to 4 weeks, right? So you could say, well, stay the course, be patient. It's only 2 to 4 weeks. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is also that JJ didn't look like a world beater when he was on the field. So why not bring back the guy that already said, well, if I knew they were going to acquire a quarterback, I would have just stayed in Minnesota. The guy that's made it clear that he and his family want to be in Minnesota. The guy that absolutely loves playing for KOC and seems to love, like he's one of the few people in the world that's like, I want to move to Minnesota. Like put him back with the Vikings, put him back on this team. The Vikings should bring him in. Carson Wentz, just send Carson Wentz to any of these other teams, and then you bring him back and you let him play in KOC's offense, and then all of a sudden what you have is the resurgence of everybody's happy, and all of a sudden he gets that last chance. Kirk Cousins back to the Vikings. I'm calling it. Needs to happen.
See, here's my only thing with that. And look, you're not wrong because a Kirk Cousins and Minnesota Vikings reunion, I think would be lovely and wonderful, and I'm here for it. I think the most important thing for JJ McCarthy and any young quarterback is keeping their confidence. We've seen that even more with JJ McCarthy. We talked about that, how it feels like whether it's Kevin O'Connell or Justin Jefferson or whoever is in that building needs to constantly reassure JJ McCarthy, this is your job. You can do this. You can go out and, have an explosive second half against the Chicago Bears. You can win us this game. We have confidence in you. If Kirk Cousins comes in, he's going to be an upgrade. He will be an upgrade over JJ McCarthy. Nothing will squash a young quarterback's confidence like a veteran who is beloved in that city, I would assume, beloved in that city coming in and being better than you. If you bring Kirk Cousins back, you're essentially, in a way, saying, JJ, you're not our guy.
Look, you're right with everything you said. I also want the drama of it. I'm just being honest. Okay, how about this one? Because I just like
it would be fun. Big D for sure.
I just like
Big D drama. That is
perfect. Yeah, I like all sorts of weirdness, right? So Marcus Mariota is going to be likely making the start on Sunday. We still don't know. Jayden Daniels could be week to week, knee injury, knee sprain. We'll see what it means for that quarterback. And so you don't need somebody to come into Washington and really cement anything for the long term. And you have Marcus, and Mariota's been fine. He's been fine. I just want the personality back, so I want Jameis Winston in the room. Look, I know the Giants and the Commanders are never going to trade, but let me live in this universe like where unicorns are real and fire-breathing dragons take you to work every day, and Jameis Winston can start just for a couple weeks for Washington just because I want to see Jameis and Jayden together and see what kind of tag team they make. I need that personality. Marcus Mariota is a great dude, and it's somebody that I consider myself lucky to have been around a little bit during his time in Tennessee. He's a great dude. But give me Jameis because I just want the personality from it. Like, I want the reality TV show known as Jameis Winston.
And I would love if Jameis Winston got the opportunity for the good Lord to bless him to play in some snow. We need that. Jameis deserves that, a la the Browns-Steelers game last season or a couple of years ago, whatever that was. No, I don't think the Commanders have to make a move. I don't. Just stick with Marcus Mariota. And that also comes from the fact that we don't know enough about Jayden Daniels' timeline. Like, if Jayden Daniels is out for the next 2 months, well, then maybe you start to reconsider a more viable option at the backup quarterback position. But for right now, like, it could be 1 game. It could be 2 games. The Commanders have an absolutely brutal schedule upcoming, but that's what you have Marcus for, is to get you through a game or 2. If it needs to be more than that, then yes, I would say that you at least pick up the phone and call around the quarterback market.
I think it's really important, too, with the health of Jayden long-term, that they just take this 1 week, and go ahead and let him heal up this week, this Sunday. Let Marcus play this Sunday. I think that's the right thing to do. I don't know who the Commanders play. Oh, wait. The Commanders play the Raiders on Sunday. I'm just saying, let Mariota play. That feels like it makes the most sense. But you're right. In the grand scheme of things, don't do anything rash in that room. We all know that Jayden's going to be the starter there for a very long time. So there's no need to make big acquisitions. And by the way, Marcus has been in this league for a minute and had some success. So I'm sure he will be just fine. I don't know. Of all 3 of these, which one concerns you the most? I think because the Bengals are in a long-term, hey, we're trying to make the playoffs. The Commanders are in, we're trying to not lose the momentum from last year. And the Vikings are in, we let Sam Darnold walk, and now we need to have something to show for it. I think all 3 are wildly concerning. Which one's the worst to you?
Of course, they're all uncomfortable positions because when your starting quarterback goes down with an injury, it feels a little bit uncomfortable. I go Bengals, though. I would say that the Bengals are in the most uncomfortable position because the timeline is the most definitive, and 3 months is a big chunk of the season, Fitzy.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And anytime you have Joe Burrow, the expectation is Super Bowls. All right, from expectations on Sundays to expectations in Major League Baseball, Jordan Shusterman going to join us next. We'll get his thoughts on, our team mascot here, the Big Dumper, and everything else happening in Major League Baseball next. Say hello to your first place Seattle Mariners. Oh, we're saying hello. We've been saying hello all show. This show is about a month old, and through the course of that month, there's one thing we can be sure of. We're a big dumper show right here. It's Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz, and I'm becoming more and more comfortable with just saying it. It wasn't at first, but this is what happens. Jordan Shusterman joining us now. Jordan, appreciate your time early in the morning. Let's just start with the big dumper because there's just a quota how many times I have to say it per show. But the Mariners in first place. Give me the likelihood that they can hang on and win their first division in about a quarter century.
Man, I think they got a real shot here. Again, are they going to win out? They've won 9 games in a row. They have this massive road trip coming up, Kansas City first, and then going to Houston. Obviously, the cop-out answer is asking again on Sunday after they've played these games against the Astros. But with that Yordan Alvarez injury last night, I mean, we'll see if that's another guy who they just got back, started to make the Astros look a lot scarier. This has just been a ridiculous season from an injury standpoint for Houston, and the Mariners are clearly taking advantage lately, and they might just do it. They certainly have the talent to do it, but at this point, kind of anything goes over these last 2 weeks.
Do you want to stick with the Mariners? Because like Fitz said, we are a very big dumper show here. Looking at AL MVP, Kyle Raleigh's MVP odds have dropped to plus 475, and Aaron Judge is the clear favorite at minus 900. Is it unfair of me to say that Aaron Judge is the overwhelming favorite because he's a Yankee and Kyle Raleigh isn't?
I think at this point, it would be surprising if Judge runs away with it. I think what Judge has going for him is that, yes, offensively, he has separated himself from essentially the rest of the sport as the best hitter of this generation. That's what these last 4 years have shown us. With the numbers that he's putting up, that is what he has. But this has been the season of Cal Raleigh in more ways than one, whether it's the home run derby, whether it's all these records as a catcher, as a switch hitter for a Mariners team that could be doing something that they haven't in 25 years. There is a lot of narrative things going in Cal Raleigh's favor that I think he is going to get votes. And I think he still has a chance at winning depending on how these last couple weeks go. That said, Aaron Judge is turning it on again over the last couple of weeks. He did have a bit of a cold spell there in August that made it look a little bit closer. There are going to be some people that are not going to be able to overlook the Aaron Judge and the Yankees, but the Yankees also might not win the division. The Mariners might, and that could help Cal in his favor as well.
Who would get your vote? Doesn't have to just be these two guys, but who would be your pick for AL MVP?
Yeah, man, it's so hard because Cal Raleigh's been one of my favorite players for a while, and watching so much of the Mariners. I mean, I think, like I just said, going with the summer of Cal, the story around what he's been able to do. The other thing that I think is important in Cal's favor, and why I will throw my support behind him, is just what it means to do this as a catcher. Yes, Aaron Judge is a really quality right fielder. But with the time that he missed and just the difference between what he has to do defensively and what Cal has to do defensively, and with this resurgence for the Mariners pitching staff in recent weeks, which we know Cal Raleigh is a big part of as well, that's the part where I don't think it's going to matter that much that the OPS is that big of a difference, because if someone wants to vote for Cal, it's going to be easy to be like, he's a catcher. That's amazing. He's doing things catchers have never done. And I think that's why I would lean slightly towards Cal, but I can't get mad at anyone voting for Judge.
Okay, but stick there for a second. You can't get mad at anybody. I'm just going to be direct here, okay? Because we're having our production meetings, and all I'm listening to is everybody behind the scenes be like, well, if you're a Yankee, you automatically win. Is there, in your mind, a bias for voters towards New York Yankees?
I don't think so. I don't think that's why Judge has gotten the love that he's gotten. I mean, you could say, oh, well, then Bobby Witt Jr. would have gotten a couple of votes last year based on the season that he had. And honestly, going down the stretch last season, I did think that Bobby Witt Jr. at least could have gotten a few votes, and Judge ended up winning unanimously. So maybe that's where we're heading for this season as well, just because Judge's offensive numbers are so far ahead of the rest of the league. But like I said, I mean, Cal Raleigh he is doing historic things. He is on a team that might win the division, which would be more significant for as important as Judge is for the Yankees, which is clearly extremely important. The Yankees have had a disappointing season, right? And so it's not Judge's fault, but it's in that way it might hurt him that the Yankees are not, winning the division like they were supposed to.
All right, you mentioned the Yankees. They took 2 or 3 from the Sox this weekend. I mean, look, as a baseball casual, and I'm always very honest about that, I want Yankee Sox in the playoffs. Am I going to get this, Jordan?
Sure seems that way. And we were just debating that on the podcast yesterday about would we rather see that later in October, in an ALCS epic matchup. But right now, the fact that we could be getting it in that short series right away, we had a few years ago these teams playing in the one-game wildcard playoff, and I was in the building for that at Fenway Park, and that was certainly one of the more memorable atmospheres and games that I can remember covering. So even if we get that in a best of three, I think that would be really exciting. And as it lines up right now, it looks more likely to be in New York, but that's still something that could change over these next 2 weeks as those teams are still fighting for home field advantage in that game, even if the Blue Jays end up winning the division.
The NL wildcard race, I think, has been fascinating, as has the Mets' ability to melt down every single year, regardless of what happens. Mets gonna Met. What is going wrong with the Mets? And maybe that's the, $100 million question of how you would diagnose what has gone wrong with the New York Mets.
The $300 million question. If we're talking about the Mets, I mean, this is a roster that obviously Steve Cohen has invested heavily in. And at the same time, I think what we saw that he did and didn't invest in on the pitching side this past offseason is kind of where they have ended up in a very, very delicate place, which is asking three rookies to basically save their season on the mound. That is what has gone wrong for the Mets. It is the pitching has completely capitulated. Some of these are veterans they were counting on that were already in-house, like Kodai Senga. Some of these are veterans that they brought in that have not been nearly as good as expected. That's Frankie Montas, who was a complete non-factor. That's Clay Holmes, who has slowly faded down the stretch. That's Sean Manaea, who they loved at this time last year, who has been injured and not very good since he came back. And so now you're going to the kids and say, hey, man, go get him, which when it works, when Nolan McLean is throwing well, it's really fun. And then when Jonathan can't get out of the first inning, it's not very fun. Is this team still talented enough to get into the postseason and make some noise? Yes. But this is a really long stretch of bad baseball for this team, and they've been bailed out by the teams chasing them not being very good to begin with.
So what's the right approach, Jordan? Because here's the thing that's always interesting to me. As a sports fan, I want my owner of whatever my favorite team is to spend gobs of money. But then it feels like when we cover Major League Baseball and an owner goes out and spends just Scrooge McDuck cash, we then turn around and we fault them. And I don't know where the right line is. Like, I get your point that maybe they could have done a better job of roster construction. I just feel like some people some baseball diehards came into this season anti-Mets because of their payroll. And I'm looking at it and saying, good God, I want owners to spend money.
Yeah, no, and I'm not trying to say that this is how they acted is bad for baseball or like, and by the way, if they didn't have Juan Soto, they would be nowhere near this conversation.
Yeah.
And that is a guy they gave a whole lot of money. So listen, the money is, they brought back Pete Alonso and they've extended Francisco Lindor. Like, listen, the money is still a big part of why they are where they are. But again, because baseball roster construction is a very delicate and difficult task that injuries, especially on the mound, can often completely derail your season. They just had some misses. They had some misses in talent evaluation, and the whatever pixie dust they were using in the beginning of their season when they had the low CRA in baseball has worn off and regressed to an extremely troubling degree. Now, the fact that they have three talented rookies that could still kind of save their ass here is also impressive, but it's also not exactly the best place you want to be compared to some of the other playoff teams that clearly have some established starters in the rotation.
And kind of looking at some other teams that are knocking on the door, but on the outside looking in, I look at the Diamondbacks. They sold at the deadline and they find themselves squarely right back in a potential playoff conversation. The Giants, the Reds, and the NL. You look at the Guardians and the Rangers in the AL. Of those teams, really any other team that you feel like could potentially make a push in these last couple of games of the season, who's most likely to find themselves in the postseason?
Yeah, so the thing I've been struggling with all season is we've looked at, the same 12 teams have been in playoff position for basically 3 months. And so they, the order has shuffled around, but we've been looking at those teams you just mentioned right on the edge and say, okay, who's going to break through? And if you're just looking at the rosters and saying which of these teams looks like a playoff team, it's the Giants. The Giants, even after they've traded some guys away, but they have players on both sides of the ball where you're like, yeah, that looks like a team that should be winning, 86, 87, 88 games. And yet they seem, once again last night, magnetically tethered to 500 That's where they've been for the last 3 years. And unfortunately, it seems like they're heading in that direction again. Whereas the Diamondbacks, completely against all odds. I mean, what a ridiculous season for them. Talking about pitching capitulation. The pitchers they're rolling out there in the bullpen right now is an incredible, whatever the opposite of who's who is what's coming out of the Diamondbacks bullpen. And yet there they are. They beat the Giants last night at home. And I guess they're in it. I don't really know how or why, but they are, so good for them. But that's why the Giants really stand out as, I think, the most disappointing. But in terms of the teams that actually could do this, I mean, the Guardians are playing better than all these teams right now. That's the team that's in my backyard. I've enjoyed watching them up close. That's not necessarily a roster, especially on offense, that looks like a playoff team. But, hey, I watched them go on a hell of a run last year, and maybe they've got some magic in left them this year too.
So as we come down to the end of the season, who deserves more love right now? Who are we not paying enough attention to?
It's Toronto. Toronto's the team. You know, we give the subtext and that kind of that referencing the Red Sox and the Yankees and whether they're going to match up in the postseason. Maybe only one of them will get to advance. And as it stands right now, that team would advance to play the Blue Jays, who have just had this awesome season. And I think the reason why Toronto deserves more love is that is a team that has a lot going right. Yes, there's still it's not a perfect team by any stretch, and I'm not saying they're like a definite World Series team, but there is so much to like about every part of that roster. They have star power on offense, guys like Vlad Jr. who are lovable, guys like George Springer having this resurgent season at age 36, some very recognizable names in the rotation, and Scherzer and Bieber, you know, and Kevin Gausman's having an amazing run. And then, you know, you got some rookies coming up. Trey Savage debut last night. He was awesome. And then a total just what a weird group of relievers, some of which have disappointed, some of which have been awesome. Braden Fisher going out there, getting some huge outs last night in Tampa Bay. They're closing in on an AL East title. A lot of teams were writing off this team at the start of the season and said, oh, Vlad's going to leave. This is the end of an era for Toronto. Bo Bichette's injury is a huge deal, and if he's not back, that definitely hurts their World Series chances. But I love watching this Blue Jays team, and I think a lot of people will too come October.
Jordan, I like nice things, so I need your help here to get ready for nice things because I decided last year at the beginning of the playoffs I would become a lifelong diehard Dodgers fan, and that worked out really well for me. So I'm going to do the same. I'm front-running my way to World Series.
A Cowboys fan too?
Like, no. That's the thing. My loyalties are so on so many bad teams in other sports. I feel like in baseball I deserve to have a high-quality option to watch. Yeah. So, like today, I'm going to adopt, based on your recommendation solely, I'm adopting my World Series team. Who am I a fan of now?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because the Brewers are the other story of the season, but I do think that they have now gotten requisite love because they've had the best record in baseball for the last 2 months. But I also very much worry about how this is going to go in October, and I think I do weirdly feel better about Toronto. So I don't know, man. If you want to go a little Canadian flavor, maybe you do hop on the Jays bandwagon. I think they have had a lot of fun there. It's very different. Again, we're pivoting different. If you want to go more the Dodgers route, just go Phillies. I don't know what your
I just want a World Series. I just don't want to be wrong. I want to be able to troll people in a bar that care immensely while I'm like, I'm a lifelong diehard insert team name head.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, I picked the Phillies before the season, and they're looking pretty good right now. Just clinched the NL East, so go with Philadelphia. There you go.
Lifelong diehard Phillies fan, Caroline. That is what I now am.
Since 5 seconds ago.
Yeah.
100%. Lifelong diehard Phillies fan since today.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate
it. We'll take it.
All right, Jordan, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Obviously, everybody check out the Baseball Barbercast. Always love that show. You guys do a great job covering all the baseball stories. Check it out on yahoosports.tv and wherever you get your pods. Jordan, thanks so much for the early morning time and the advice. If the Phillies win it all, I'll send you a hat. And if they don't, then we're mortal enemies. Thank you so much, brother.
We will both suffer together. Thank you. See you guys.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jordan.
That's great stuff from Jordan as we break it all down. And coming up, while you weren't paying attention, the WNBA stupidly decided to start their playoffs. Time to rail them for it. We'll do that next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Hannah Hoops tweeted out, I don't get why WNBA made the start of the playoffs on NFL Sunday. Hannah Hoops has never been more right. I don't even know Hannah Hoops. That might be the most accurate tweet in the history of Twitter. That's all I have to say about that, because certainly while you weren't paying attention, many of you, the WNBA playoffs started. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. This is Yahoo Sports Daily. I want to start this by being abundantly clear. You host a great show for Yahoo Sports about the WNBA. We have done work together about the WNBA. I've covered the W for years. You've covered the W for years. We are coming at this conversation as advocates of the league, as supporters of the league, as people that cover the league. And that's why I get really frustrated, Caroline, because when these things get clipped off and it sounds like somebody else is just railing on the W for no reason. No, like I rail on the W because I have wildly high expectations for a league that I think should continue to blow up and for people that I think deserve a ton of attention. So imagine my just shock and awe Sunday when I'm sitting in a bar in New England and there's a bunch of football on, and all of a sudden one of the TVs is turned over to the WNBA playoffs, and the bar started to actively boo. Now, I'm not saying that was the right approach to it, but I think what it hit me in that moment, even as a supporter of the league, is why in the hell would you look around at the sports calendar landscape and say, you know what? The right time to start our playoffs is on the second Sunday of the NFL season. It made zero sense to me.
Well, let me just say, if you're booing at a sport, like, grow up. Like, are you 11? No longer is it cool or funny to hate women's basketball. Like, you don't have to be a fan of something and despise its existence. You can just not be a fan of it. I'm not an MLS fan, but I don't boo it when it's on TV. Okay, so let's everybody just grow up and be mature adults about this. Number two, maybe I'm just exposing my ignorance to how this process goes, but was that a WNBA decision or was that an ESPN decision? Because, I mean, the playoffs have to start sometime, right? Well, ESPN's entire slate on a Saturday is college football. ESPN's most important real estate on a Monday is Monday Night Football, and it's all the pregame coverage. And then on this Monday, obviously, we had a doubleheader, so the first game started earlier. And when you have 4 games, which the WNBA playoffs had in the first game of the first round, you have 4 games in a day, that's going to have to span pretty much a majority of the day and would go into Monday Night Football time. So are we calling out the WNBA for this? Like, does the WNBA decide when the games are on, or does your television partner decide when they have open real estate to cover and to air these games live? Because if I'm going to point the finger at anybody, I think I have to point the finger at ESPN. You're investing in the WNBA. You want to be advocates of the game. Look, I think the WNBA has done ESPN has been a wonderful advocate for women's sports. They have new shows that are dedicated to women's sports. They've given a lot of coverage to women's sports and women's basketball. Like, this is not an anti-ESPN sentiment in the slightest, but I kind of blame ESPN for putting the WNBA playoffs in a day where ESPN doesn't have much real estate, and that, unfortunately, is on an NFL Sunday.
Yeah, to me, that it speaks of a lack of awareness from both sides. Like, both sides got to be better. I'm not necessarily, if you want to put some of this on Jimmy Pitaro and ESPN, I think that's probably pretty fair also, right? At some point, it's a lose-lose for everybody. And for the argument that it's counter-programming, which is what several people have said, well, maybe, the audience is different. I get that, but playoffs are about growing your audience. There are playoff games in the W tonight, which ESPN can spend all day advertising. We have the WNBA playoffs tonight. They could have been advertising the playoffs start tonight. And I'll go back to my music roots, Caroline. Like, a lot of people may not realize this, but when you put out a single, like back in especially 10 years ago when country music radio was really important, when you would sit down with your record label and say, all right, we want to put out a single, you would do the math knowing how long it usually takes your songs to be top 5 to figure out when you were going for number 1. And if you looked at it for a record or for a single and you said, oh, yeah, well, Taylor Swift's putting out a record, she's going to be going for number 1 that week, or Luke Bryan's, we did this. Like, we would sit down and say, nope, we got to delay the entire release cycle because we don't want to be competing with this artist, insert artist over here, that's bigger than we are for attention when we're trying to get a number 1 record, because it really matters to get a number 1 record. Like, that's real in most business. Like, understanding the line between counter programming and then maximizing your audience is important. To me, the WNBA's opportunity, and the NBA's when it's in the heat of the season, comes on Tuesday nights. It comes on Wednesday nights. It comes in those opportunities. So you're right. You can't cram the entire thing. But I think the start, particularly of the playoffs, now that we're in a 1-1-1 3-game series in the first round, all of these things that are great for attention, when you're starting it, I want fanfare all day long. And ESPN does that better than anybody. They can make all of their shows. I've worked there. They can literally require all of their shows cover the beginning of the WNBA playoffs. They would do that, but they didn't, right? So they put it on a Sunday, and most people didn't even know. And that's what's stunning to me. I was texting friends that are like, the playoffs have started, and friends that like the league were surprised that this was actual playoff basketball. And that just speaks to a lack of sales pitch, a lack of buildup. That's everybody's fault. And at some point, everybody loses in this situation, because right now we have playoff series going on. And I think it's just the casual that's walking around that barely watches the W doesn't even know what a good storyline is for the first round.
It's a disservice for sports fans, and it's a disservice for the continued growth of this league, because I think that there is a small subset of sports fans that are such diehard W fans that they will watch the WNBA playoffs over week 2 of the NFL. That's just the reality. I've said it before. I will say it until I'm blue in the face. If you go up against the NFL, you will lose. And that is in any form or fashion. You go up against the NFL in court, you're going to lose. You go up against the NFL in a TV slate, you're going to lose. The NFL is king. And that's not just the W. That's Major League Baseball. That's the NHL. That's the NBA. That's college football. That is the Westminster Dog Show. I don't care what it is. If you go up against the NFL, you will lose. And so it was such a disservice, I felt like, to the WNBA, to sports fans like myself that love both leagues, that I have to pick and choose. It's a disservice to the continued growth, because there's probably a lot of sports fans out there that would love to be, view the WNBA playoffs. They would love to be open to the great storylines that exist in the WNBA. Because if you're listening and probably rolling your eyes about, the WNBA, first of all, spare me, save it. I don't want to hear it. Second of all, there's great storylines in this league. For the first time ever, all teams represented in the WNBA playoffs were above 500 in the regular season. So this means that this postseason is potentially poised for a ton of chaos, because the Lynx, the number 1 team in the league, they've been the best team in the league for pretty much the entirety of the season, are taking on the Golden State Valkyries, the first ever expansion team to make the postseason in its inaugural season. I mean, look, it was a blowout in the first game, but I do not think it's outside of the realm of possibility that Golden State could take down Minnesota in game 2. I also look at the Las Vegas Aces. They are now on a 17-game winning streak. 17-game winning streak. They are 1 win away from tying the WNBA record for most consecutive wins. That is so fun to watch. Asia Wilson has put together an MVP caliber resume over the last month and some change. The Aces are red freaking hot. They cannot lose. They are so incredibly fun to watch. They're like Golden State Warriors type of football. They drained basketball. They drained 14 threes in their first game against Seattle in that playoff series. So there are a lot of really fun storylines to watch, and you're missing out on them because you don't have, accessibility to it, or you have other sports like the NFL. The NFL is king, that is casting this major shadow over what is a really fun product.
To your point, I think it's a disservice for college football to not wait to announce their college football playoff dates until the NFL has given us their dates. I think college football playoffs should stay out of the way. This is not just a WNBA problem. And
everyone should stay out of the way.
And I want to be really, really clear here. I have been tough in the month we've been together. I've been tough on the league. I've been tough on Kathy Engelbert. That's consistent to my entire career. I am tough on those things because I like the WNBA and because I like what the WNBA brings to the sports landscape, and because I think it's important for people to have the opportunity to fall in love with it and actually watch it instead of listening to a bunch of idiots on Twitter X that have never watched a second of it comment on it. Like, I think that there's value in that. By the way, there's always value in Hoops 360. We told you about it. Caroline Fenton, part of a great show. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. I'm just fired up. You guys do a great job covering it, Caroline. It's a fun show.
Thank you, Fitzy. It's an absolute blast of a show. It's myself, Cassandra Negley, and Icy Young. They're all experts, absolute superstars. We have a great time breaking down all of the action in the playoffs. We'll have multiple episodes a week, so you can stay up to date with all of the action in the playoffs, and we'll continue that through the college basketball season, through Unrivaled. A lot of fun things happening in the women's game.
Cass is one of the best at covering it, and Ice is one of the best people I've ever worked with. Check the show out. In the meantime, we've got a massive conflict of interest, and the NFL needs to step in right now. We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back to hour number 2 at Yahoo Sports Daily. No tacos consumed yet on this Tuesday, but it's early. Could have had a breakfast taco. I don't know. Taco Tuesday. There we go. I'm just, I'm hungry, Caroline. All right, I'm hungry. That's the scoop. She's Caroline Fenton.
I get it.
Jason Fitz. Well, let's start this hour like we start every single hour. 3 points. What is on your mind, my friend?
Absolutely. So LSU takes down Florida on Saturday, but it was not without a lot of offensive woes. Only 13 offensive points scored against what was a pretty bad Florida Gators team. So a reporter, Michael Cobble, shouts out WBRZ in Baton Rouge. He asked Brian Kelly, head coach of LSU, what was wrong with the offense. And Brian Kelly responded by saying, "You're spoiled. How dare you ask that question?" It was a pretty long tirade of a very clearly angry Brian Kelly about being asked about what is now the lowest scoring offense in the SEC. That went viral, of course, and Brian Kelly did respond and did address the tirade. Essentially, he said, I've texted with the reporter and offered my apology to him for the way that I handled the questioning. He went on to say that I need to be better. I need to be better about my relationship with the media. And I think Brian Kelly did the right thing. He not only apologized to the reporter directly, he also apologized publicly. I think that's the right way to handle it. Admit that you were wrong, apologize, and we can all move on. Now, I don't have a problem with the way that Brian Kelly handled the apology. I do, however, have a problem with the way that he addressed the reporter. There are much better ways and much calmer ways to respond to a question that you don't necessarily want to answer. And I do understand that Brian Kelly wants to hype up his guys in the locker room, and he wants his guys to hear him say they just went out and beat an SEC opponent. That's not easy to do, and of course it's not. But if Brian Kelly cannot elaborate on what the problem is, how should fans, myself included, I'm an LSU fan, how should I feel encouraged and optimistic that he's addressing the problem and the problem is going to get better? Because you cannot put lipstick on a pig. LSU has scored 20 points a game over the last couple of weeks. It's not good enough. And Brian Kelly, the way that he handled the media, wasn't good enough either.
The fine line is just always, you want these things to improve, but he is coming off of a win. I feel for everybody involved in this because the reporter did his job, but I do understand why Coach was a little bit emotional about the first question being negative after a win. It's the burden of the beast. He's got to handle it better.
Welcome to LSU.
Yeah, well, 100%. That's why it's the SEC, baby. Okay, I'll get you my first point for this hour. And it's about the Astros and what just, at this point, Houston's life just got a lot more difficult yet again. So we've talked a little bit about it this morning, but Yordan Alvarez suffers a nasty-looking sprained ankle as he is coming across home plate. And this has become sort of the theme for the Astros this year. Now, I will credit Zach Cole, by the way, who came in. Zach Cole was playing AAA ball 8 days ago, and now, boom, automatically has to come in and automatically does come in. Drives in 3 of the 6 runs the Astros score, has a big game. But the fact is, the Astros have been a mash unit all year. You start to talk about injuries, and we do this across sports, and there were 18 players on the injured list in July at one point for this Astros team. 18 at one time. They've lost 3 starting pitchers to season-ending surgeries at this point, and they have 2 others that they've lost for the season, not to mention their all-star closer's been gone. The number of injuries the Astros have had to make it through, we're sitting here trying to figure out how it will impact the playoff race, and I understand that. But maybe the bigger conversation piece right now for the Astros needs to be, how in the hell are they even in the playoff race? We talk about depth all the time across all sports, but particularly when you start talking about needing this level of depth in your pitching, when you start talking about losing guys that mean as much as Alvarez does, when you start talking about the actual consequence of those injuries and it stacks up one after the other, I'm always left to wonder where the breaking point is. I know that the Astros have become sort of polarizing in the modern generation, certainly rightfully so for some of the things that have happened in the past. But this team right now, there's nothing polarizing about it. It's easy to root for a team that's able to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and able to mash themselves through a season. That's exactly what Houston is doing right in front of our very eyes. I don't know how Houston is going to maximize this season. And frankly, whatever they're getting out of this year, to me, is bonus. It's free cash at this point because this team, the way they've been decimated by injuries this year, shouldn't even be in the conversation. The fact that they are and the fact that they continue to be next man up and next man up at a level of efficiency that actually results in wins is stunning to me. So while this is a absolute consequence injury that will impact whether or not they can compete, and we'll find out just how bad the ankle is after an MRI comes later today. Once we know that information, we can figure out what it means for the long-term playoff possibilities of this Astro team. I'm just sitting here still stunned right now that they're even in the conversation. All right, Caroline, let's get to the top point. And the top point is, I don't know, a Monday Night Football game people tell me happened. I don't remember much about. Okay,
who played Fitz?
The Raiders lost. The Raiders got their ass kicked last night. 20-9 is the final score. I didn't see a lot that surprised me in this game, but I will tell you this. If you are a fantasy football owner, and I want to say this loudly because we do so much fantasy football here. If you are a fantasy football owner, you need to start panicking about Ashton Jeanty, all right? Because the most staggering part of this, 11 carries, 43 yards, you see it there, in a 20-9 loss. But it's time to panic because Ashton Jeanty went the wrong way on a handoff. He also missed a couple of blitz assignments that caused Geno Smith to get cremated. He gave up on one play and just stopped blocking the defender that then chased down Geno from behind. These were all bad looks. And what really hit me, Caroline, is that with about 4.5 minutes left when the Raiders went into a more tempo offense, Ashton wasn't on the field. Never saw the field again in the last several minutes. I think the Raiders told you right now that there's a lot he needs to work on other than just running the football before they trust him for 3 downs. And the problem is when he is given the football, he's met behind the line of scrimmage half the time because the offensive line isn't good enough. So I came into this season saying Ashton Jeanty could be number 1 overall, RB1 in this fantasy season. I am eating a bunch of crow right now because the pieces around Ashton aren't good enough. Ashton isn't good enough. And the Raiders, who are 1-1 right now, right where I thought they would be. It's not an abject disaster, but the production of Ashton Jeanty through 2 weeks certainly is.
I'm shocked it was even 43 yards. Because before I looked at the box score, before I looked at the numbers, I thought it was going to be maybe half of that at most. Because it felt like every time I looked at Ashton Jeanty carrying the football, for the most part, he was tackled behind the line of scrimmage. Like he couldn't get anything going. And look, some of that is just defenses are going to say, we are not going to let that guy beat us. If he is on the field, we will stack the Bucs because we will not let Ashton Jeanty beat us. But I think the scariest position for the Raiders to be in is when defenses stop maybe paying as much attention to Ashton Jeanty and he still can't get a high level of production. So I'm with you. I think overall, the Raiders' running back needs to be better. And I would say that about the Chargers as well, because look, I will give so much credit. If we want to move over to the Chargers side of things, and I know, Fitzy, that you were kind of licking your Raiders fans' wounds today, and I'm sorry. The Raiders are still in a good place. But if I want to switch over to the Chargers' perspective of things, I will give credit to Jim Harbaugh, who is a run it down your throats, play, hard and tough at the lines of scrimmage, old football guy, old school kind of football guy mentality. I think he looked at his team and the way that they're constructed with the quarterback that they have and with the receivers that they have supplemented that offense with. They said, well, we're better served if we air the football out. And it was so fun to watch this Chargers team do that. But the Chargers also need a run game to supplement what they have in the passing game. Because what we saw Justin Herbert was their leading rusher. And when you have a Marion Hampton and Najee Harris in that rushing core, you need to be better at running the football if the Chargers want to be a legitimate playoff, possibly even Super Bowl contender. You have to be better on the ground. I guess I'll ask you that question, Fitz. From what you saw last night, if you want to take your Raiders tinted glasses off, from what we've seen last night and what we've seen through two weeks, are the Chargers a Super Bowl contender?
Yeah, that defense is good enough to win a Super Bowl. Justin Herbert, I thought, was absolutely great in that game. I tweeted out that it was a masterclass last night, and somebody clapped back and said 20 points isn't a masterclass. Well, the Chargers dropped a couple of passes where nobody was in there and could have easily had it. They also had just a stupid 4th down call late in the game that made absolutely no sense. It resulted in a turnover. Marion Hampton dropped a football, and they were still in control through the duration of the entire game. Yeah, this is a team. You're right. They need to be more intentional, I think, about running the football because they certainly ran the football with purpose when they did. It just never felt like they wanted to commit to running the football. So that's a little curious to me as they find a little bit better balance and as they find a little bit better sort of control on what they're trying to execute offensively. Certainly. I don't think that they're right now in the same category as the Bills or the Ravens, but if I put those two teams in a different category in the AFC. I think the Chargers are the best of the rest. They're at the top of that next tier. They're better than the Chiefs right now. They're a little better than the Colts right now. So yeah, I think they're capable of winning a Super Bowl.
The defense, I think, puts them in that position. The 4th down call, I didn't mind them going for it on 4th because I looked at it hey, you're at midfield. Didn't mind them going for it at all. It made sense. Just because it didn't work doesn't mean it's a bad call. We need to hold ourselves accountable to that as sports fans. I thought the play call was dumb. A jet sweep toss, just run it up the middle. You have one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League. Justin Herbert's only been sacked twice through 2 games. Just trust that they can create at least a little bit of a hole for you to just jumbo pack and shove your way up the middle to be able to get that 1st down. So I thought the play call was bad. Didn't mind them going for it. But outside of that game and what we saw in the box score, the X's and O's, so on and so forth, I think one of the biggest storylines that we came away from that game wasn't what happened on the field, but it was what happened in the booth. Tom Brady, we know, is a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. He was in the coach's booth with a headset on, but let's not forget that Tom Brady is also a broadcaster. That has to be, Fitz, a clear and obvious conflict of interest. Like we just see right there, that's a conflict of interest. That Tom Brady, as a broadcaster, is in meetings with coaches and players. He's getting inside, probably for the most part, confidential information. He is getting an inside peek at 31 other teams in the National Football League. He is getting information on these teams that no other minority owner in sports is getting. And then he's also in the coach's booth with a headset on. That seems wrong. That feels icky. And that is fishy to me. And I am shocked that the NFL is letting that happen, Tom Brady or not.
The NFL needs to step in right now and stop it. I mean, there should be a choice made at this point on what exactly your role is. One of the most surprising parts of the broadcast last night was the revelation that Chip Kelly flat out told the TV production team from ESPN that he talks to Tom Brady 2 or 3 times a week, that they talk about the game plan. They talk about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. So now you've got a minority team owner in the coaching box who is part of the conversations with the offensive coordinator repeatedly about what's going to happen. And you look at this, he talks to him 2 or 3 times a week, and he's also in crazy meetings. Look at this week coming up. This week coming up is a short week for the Raiders to go across the country and take on the Washington Commanders. That's a lofty assignment. Well, Brady's called a Commanders game. How much information does he have about what they're trying to run, how they're trying to run it? Part of what happens in these meetings is getting a sense not just of players, but of coaches, of what they're doing and what they're doing well, what they're willing to put on certain players, what they're not willing to put on certain players. It really helps the color and the analyst sit back and say, how do we tell the story of this game? You got to have as much information. So where we as fans might be surprised that one guy isn't getting the ball, the TV crew is rarely surprised because they find those things out during the meetings that they have. Well, now what you have is somebody that's getting that information and now is admittedly talking to coaches 2 or 3 times a week. How that isn't a conflict of interest, I can't understand. It really feels like genuinely what the Raiders did was they gave a minority ownership stake to Tom Brady, not to be an owner, but to be part GM, to be part team president, to be part coach, to have his hands in literally everything that they do. And if you're going to do that with an ownership stake attached to it, that's already controversial in some league circles. If you're going to do that while he's also making money from Fox to call games, that's giving him early insight into what the Bears are going to be doing a few weeks before the Bears and the Raiders play, shame on the NFL for letting that happen. This absolutely, transparency is key in a conspiracy theorist world. This makes the NFL look fixed. There's no 2 ways about it. It makes the NFL look like they're giving Brady and the Raiders an advantage.
How do you feel about that as a Raiders fan? Or maybe what is being said in the Raiders circles? Because feels to me a clear and obvious advantage. I think a lot of fans would love that kind of clear and obvious advantage for their football team. But it still makes you question the integrity, not just of that team, but of the entire league, if they're allowing these things to happen, in my opinion.
It just feels gross, and it feels like it creates a narrative that will take away from success when you have it. It won't be, oh, the Raiders won this game. It'll be, oh, well, Brady knew this was coming. And that's such a weird spot to be in. I mean, if you're the Raiders organizationally, you have paid Pete Carroll a boatload of money to come out of retirement. You have made Chip Kelly the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL. And you still need to run the game plan by Brady 3 times a week? Like this, all of this just feels very weird. And I hear every time the broadcast is like, well, why wouldn't you rely on him? You've got him. Why wouldn't you rely on him? Okay, I hear that. Then rely on him. Put him in an official role and make him part of the organization in that sense. But for Roger Goodell to allow him to sit in a meeting with coaches, I guess my other question is, why would any other coach be comfortable showing Brady literally anything? If you have the Raiders on the schedule that year, why would you let Tom Brady in your facility? And as this smartly was pointed out last night by some reporters, this also gives Brady the advantage to talk to assistant coaches early, to start to know, oh, this guy's got some real potential. He could be a great offensive coordinator. This guy's got real potential. He could come over to our staff. Yeah. It gives you the opportunity to just go in and tamper with literally everything. And now, even if we come in and say, well, were they tampering? Was this a rules violation? How the hell do we know? Where's the line between what's Brady's job and what's Brady's job? Because he's got 2 very different jobs. It doesn't, none of it makes sense to me, Caroline.
And that's the Raiders' perspective. And from the Fox perspective, you are paying Tom Brady handsomely for his services. So if you are a coach and you understand the position that Tom Brady is in, I think you very fairly point out that there's probably some information that they would not want to divulge to Tom Brady, knowing that he has direct access to Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll and the entire Raiders organization. So then that also kind of changes the way that we view a broadcast. Then the quality of the broadcast, the information that is being given to the broadcast booth is pulled back a little bit, so we as the viewers, the fans of the game, don't get as much of a a 360-degree view of what's going on within that organization. And of course, an organization isn't going to divulge any information that they don't want to, whether it's Brady or not, whether it's any broadcaster out there. But still, I would have to think the sense of trust is compromised because these teams do not want to give the broadcaster Tom Brady and also the owner Tom Brady information that they don't have to. So all of a sudden, the experience as a viewer is compromised as well. And I'm sure Tom Brady can have a handshake agreement all he wants with the league, with Fox, with the Raiders, and say, I can keep both of my hats separate, all right? I'm a broadcaster. I can take that hat off, and then I can be an owner. A handshake agreement isn't good enough for me. Why would he do that? Why would he not give the team that he is a minority owner of any sort of tactical advantage that they can get?
And why not at this point, since Pandora's box has been opened? I mean, if I'm the Panthers, I'm calling Greg Olsen. How much? Hey, let's give you 1% of the team. We're gonna give you 1% of the team. If I'm the Cowboys, calling Troy Aikman, hey, we'll give you 1% of the team.
Yeah.
You start going up and down the list. If one team is going to be allowed to do this, then just start letting everybody that ever played. Like if I'm the Broncos, I'm calling Schlereth and saying, hey, all right, we'll give you 1% of the team. Whatever it takes to get the knowledge that you're getting in advance would absolutely do. The NFL needs to step in and do something. We'll keep breaking it down for you, obviously, but one of the biggest results of the weekend was Notre Dame. They sit at 0-2, but somehow they're still ranked. Do they have a path to the playoffs? We'll figure it out next. The AP poll kept Notre Dame in at number 24, making them the first-ranked 0-2 team since 1988. Wow. Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. That is a historic stat, I should say. And it speaks to the fact that Notre Dame has 2 losses to 2 teams that are highly regarded. But the real question here becomes, should they be ranked? And even more importantly, Caroline, Is there anything left for Notre Dame? They're 0-2 at this point. They played the 2 ranked teams that are on their schedule. What now?
Yes, there is something left for Notre Dame because there are no ranked teams on their schedule yet. And I will say, I will walk that back. USC is now ranked at 25. Notre Dame plays USC later in the season. So now they have a ranked team on their schedule, but also if Notre Dame wins out, which I think is in the realm of possibility. Purdue, Arkansas, Boise State, NC State, USC, like I said, Boston College, Navy, Pitt, Syracuse, Stanford. There's not one game in there that I can highlight and say, eek, that's not a game Notre Dame's going to be favored in. That's not a game that Notre Dame should win. So I think that Notre Dame can win out at 10-2. A 10-2 Notre Dame team is going to make the playoff. They will, 100%. The College Football Playoff Committee loves Notre Dame. Let's not forget that these are humans. These are people with inherent biases that are voting on these teams to get in the playoffs. So I think that while the margin for error is 0, like Notre Dame cannot lose another game, and every single game from here on out, understanding that it is on the weaker side of a schedule, Notre Dame needs some style points. Like they're going to have to blow some of these teams out of the water over this next stretch if they do want to still continue to be in the conversation. But a 10-2 Notre Dame team absolutely is still in the playoff conversation. But I do not believe that an 0-2 Notre Dame team has any place to be in the AP poll right now. And I think it brings up a very fair philosophical question about what the AP poll is. Well, is it a poll of a ranking of what we think these teams should be, what we think these teams are, or what these teams have done? I believe that the rankings are based off of what they've done, what we've seen. We have tangible tape and film and games and box scores and scores that we have seen, that we don't have to go off of Fantasyland. We don't have to go off of what we thought. We can go off of what is. And if we go off of what is, Notre Dame has not won a game. Notre Dame is winless. Notre Dame is 0-2 through 3 weeks of the college football season. Does that mean that Notre Dame can't find themselves back in the rankings? Of course not. Absolutely. They can. They and every other team in America can find themselves right back into the top 25. But in what world? Where a South Florida team who beat a top 25 Boise State team and a top 25 Florida team in the Swamp and lost to the same team that Notre Dame lost to in Miami. In what world should a 2-1 South Florida team with 2 ranked wins be outside of the top 25 and an 0-2 Notre Dame team is in it? Make that make sense to me. If Notre Dame and South Florida were to play today on a neutral field, I think Notre Dame is probably favored by 2 touchdowns. But that's not what the AP poll is. It's not based off of Vegas. It's not based off of imaginary games. It's based off of actual games that we have seen. And we have not seen Notre Dame win a football game yet.
People would be freaking out if it was the exact same thing and it was Alabama. I mean, if Alabama were 0-2 and sitting in this situation, even though you and I both know that Alabama would be favored on a neutral field above half of these teams, people would be losing their minds. I don't think Notre Dame should be ranked at this point. I think it's absolutely, it just shows you how irrelevant these rankings are. And that's like just being honest for a second.
But I'll push
these
back
rankings
on
are
that,
useless.
Fitz. These rankings are not useless. These rankings are not irrelevant. The AP poll is the base for what the College Football Playoff Committee uses for the actual rankings that matter. So no, the rankings that come out on September 15th are not the end-all be-all, but they do influence how we view these teams and wins and losses along the line. Like Illinois is now the 9th ranked team in the country. I love Brett Bielema. No disrespect to Illinois, but they've beaten Western Illinois, Duke, and Western Michigan. In what world should Illinois be a top 10 team with that resume? If Ohio State, Penn State, whoever else in the Big Ten they have on their schedule, if they take down Illinois, that's a top 10 win. Well, maybe that's a falsely inflated win on a resume that, once we come into December, into January, once we get into college football playoff time, maybe that's portraying a false narrative about the quality of some of these wins. So no, these rankings are not irrelevant. These rankings are the baseline for how we view the rest of college football for the next 8 weeks.
I still argue that the committee will go in with their own independent mindset. And so I find them to be irrelevant because, frankly, where we sit right now, do I believe that the College Football Playoff Committee would see the rankings the same way as this? Not a chance. So, the committee runs with their own independent mindset. Yes, this is their baseline, but they move teams around all the time. So and then the other portion of all of this is that at the end of the day, the only real importance of the rankings is it puts a number by the TV for people that don't like college football. Like, so if you're turning on Saturday, you're like, oh, it says 3 versus 6, it must be good. Like that to me is the only value here. And to your point on Notre Dame, I'll just continue to say, no, does the 2-loss Notre Dame team make the college football playoff? Not unless there's absolute chaos ahead of them. I don't believe this year that there is enough in front of them. There are only 7 spots for them to compete for. We always talk about 12, but there are 5 automatic bids. So Notre Dame's shot is to be one of the 7 at-larges. And just look at the way the college football landscape is running right now and who those at-larges could be. Like, I don't believe that they're going to get in over a team like Tennessee. I don't believe they're going to get in over a team, any of the rest of the – how many of these SEC teams are going to get in? How many of these Big Ten teams are going to get in? If we are in a world where, let's say Ohio State represents the Big Ten, well, Penn State is certainly right now as we stand would be better off. Illinois, as you mentioned, like, should they be ranked that high? I don't know. But as we sit today, Illinois stands a better – it's not hard to get to 7 teams that are in major conferences that will have a massive advantage in their schedule by the end of the season over Notre Dame. So even though I do believe that the committee looks at it and respects Marcus Freeman as a coach, respects the talent that Notre Dame has, respects the size, the speed, all the things that they look at from the eye test of football minds, I get all of that. If you have 2 losses and they're the only 2 good teams on your schedule, and then you play a bunch of trashy teams, you better beat the snot out of them. Like, you better undeniably just destroy them. And you got to be so damn good that by the end of the year, there is no question that they can say, oh, this team has evolved. Like a 1-point win for Notre Dame at this point is every bit the same as a loss to that committee. They've got to show dominance that is absolutely otherworldly. So I do think that there's a real world where Notre Dame at 2 losses can miss the college football playoff.
I could. I wouldn't bet on it. The college football playoff wants that brand so badly. And by December, we forget about September. And it is so easy to forget about some of those early season losses. I will say this about the AP poll, though. We need to be more comfortable with going away from what the initial preseason's ranking said. The preseason rankings are only off of what we think. Can you tell me today that Georgia, Miami, and Oregon aren't better teams than LSU? I would say definitively, yes, they are, but LSU is ranked above those teams. Can you tell me right now today that Oklahoma is not a better team than Texas? I would take Oklahoma by a touchdown if those 2 teams played tomorrow. Oklahoma is ranked 11th. Texas is at 8. Like, we need to be okay with going away from preseason rankings because what we've seen the field is not indicative of what we see in these rankings.
I'll go a step farther. We need to eliminate these preseason rankings. Like, the problem is we want the college football conversation that comes with them. And we like to fill content hours for months talking about college football when there are no games to talk about. I believe preseason rankings do more harm than good. Preseason rankings, preseason chatter is the reason that we anointed Arch Manning as part of the Mount Rushmore of college football quarterbacks before he'd ever done a damn thing. So I think that there's harm done from these rankings. The first ranking should not come out in any way, shape, or form. There should be no ranking, AP or any other, until the first time we hear from the College Football Playoff Committee, Halloween week. By the way, that gives them time to figure out who's actually good, who's actually bad. Not what you thought was going to be, but what actually happened this season. That gives them the time to do it. If the AP poll really wanted to be honest with the world for a second, and if college football fanatics like me and you weren't just desperate for conversation pieces, the poll wouldn't even happen until late October.
We are gluttons for context. We need that. We need so badly as sports fans to put certain teams in boxes of good and bad. And it's fun throughout the season when we get to shuffle up those boxes and the teams we thought were good aren't, and the teams we thought were bad are actually good. But when we don't have anything actually tangible to go off of in the preseason, we need something. We need to compartmentalize these teams. And that's really why I think we cling so, tightly to what those preseason rankings were, is because we want to categorize teams as good and bad when it's really not fair that we even do it.
Well, we also love drama in every conversation piece, and rankings give us drama. All right, from drama off the field that doesn't matter to actual play on the field, Shaquill Griffin joins us next. We'll talk to the Seahawks superstar about the Seahawks so far this year.
overrated. Today, explain why.
I've been kind of gassy in practice today. Any big boys. I need a little space.
Whoever's the heaviest, because usually they smell bad.
Oh, everybody wants to sit next to our next guest right now. Joining us live early in the morning, Shaquill Griffin joining us on Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Man, Shaquill, we appreciate your time this morning, especially coming off a big win. Let's get right to it, man. Like when you think about the first win of the year, whenever that comes to you, the first win, does it hit different when you get that first one?
Oh, of course. One thing about it is it's very hard to get wins in this NFL league. And so once you get one, that first one, start to get the gates open and stuff a little bit. It's a great feeling. That's something that you want to capitalize on each week. And we finally got our first one, so now we got something to build off of.
I've always been told some of the most important things in football, the first down and the first win. Once you get those, it just feels like everything else feels so much easier. But in your most recent game this past weekend, I mean, the Seahawks had one of the most heads up, most exciting special teams plays. Special teams need love too. And the kickoff lands in the landing zone and rolls into the end zone. Steelers returner Caleb Johnson doesn't go for it, but George Holani does fall on it in the end zone. There's been so many changes with special teams, the kickoff rules in the NFL that as a fan and as somebody who covers the sport, honestly, it's hard for me to keep up with some of these rule changes. What about for you guys? Is it hard for you to keep up with all of these changes? Did you know in the moment what that new rule was?
Oh man, I think one thing we do well with over here in Seattle, we stay above the rules and everything that's going on with the new special team rules and stuff like that. So I feel like one thing about it, we was already aware of what could happen. One thing about it, we continue to tell our returners, what they need to know. I feel like that's a phenomenal job on our coaches to make sure that each game, that if any possible situation, if we in it, we know exactly what we need to do to get a chance to get an advantage. And we're completely prepared. I can only imagine, what that guy felt in the back end as a returner, not knowing that rule. And I know that's something I'm pretty sure was a pretty tough Monday meeting for him to kind of have to see that over again. But no, this is something I'm pretty sure that's going to go wild around the league and make sure every returner must know these type of rules. But one thing about it was already prepared for it.
You're so right. That footage goes to everybody now, and everybody learns from one guy's mistake. This is your second stint with the Seahawks. So your first stint was with Pete Carroll. Now, obviously, Mike Macdonald is your coach. Walk me through the differences. How different is this era of the Seahawks for you compared to the first time you were there?
Man, I feel like I had that question a while back. What's crazy? I feel like McDonald is doing a phenomenal job of, keeping the message that Pete kind of created already and putting his own little flavor into it. One thing about it, I feel like he still continued to be that player's coach who worked extremely hard, which is great because that's exactly what we need to be, exactly where we want to be at. One thing about it, everybody still carry that same message, show your same personality, be exactly who you are, do exactly what you need to do to play your best role. And whatever role that is, just be great at it. That's one of the messages Pete kind of gave us early on. And now McDonald kind of took over and put his own flavor into it. And one thing about it, these guys bought into it. And I love the great things that, Mike McDonald is doing over here.
So I want to hit you on that for a second because I remember when he left the Ravens players talked about how complicated his defense is, the assignments. It took a minute to get ready for it, to figure it out. You're in that defense. What makes it different?
Yeah. I think what makes it different is we got the right pieces behind us. We got some older guys who can kind of explain, exactly what we need to get done, the type of disguises we need to show. And I feel like the best part about it, we got a really phenomenal group. Some of the young guys who compare with us, one thing about it, they want to learn more. A good thing is, they always want to meet up. They got a ton of questions and think about it. They don't feel like they know it all. And I feel like that's the best part. We got the right pieces that mix together that everybody want to see great things from each other. And, when you got guys like that, we can figure out a defense at any time, at any moment. And it makes it easier for everybody because it's each one teach one. And that's kind of the rule that we follow around here. And everybody is buying into it.
That I do love to hear that because I always feel like as a veteran in a league, you're focused on your job and what you need to do and, continuing your career. But there's also that element of being a mentor, of, helping young guys along. So how do you embrace that role? What is your personal philosophy of not just taking care of your job, but also making sure that everyone around you is also taken care of?
I think it's easy. I think it's easy to embrace that role. I feel like I've always been a type, but I love to see people win. I want to see greatness from my players. I get excited. I think one person in particular right now is Josh Jobe. A guy that's just been stepping up phenomenally. Coming off the year he had last year to now, man, it's just I feel like he could be a top 10 corner. And I'm rooting for this man every day. But at the end of the day, for each player, I just genuinely want to see these guys win. And I feel like we got a bunch of guys like that in our room, on this team and this organization that everybody just want to see greatness out of everybody. And when you got guys like that connected, it's nothing that can stop us, because at the end of the day, I'm going to give you everything that I have, everything that I learned over these last 9 to 10 years. I'm going to give you everything that I have because I want to see greatness out of you. I want to see you guys win because if you win, we all win. And I think that's the type of mentality that we guys created in this room, in this building, that organization. So, man, it's contagious.
I was just about to say, hearing you talk about it, I have a smile on my face. It is contagious, that kind of selflessness. You were in Minnesota last year with Sam Darnold. Then you go to Seattle with, again, Sam Darnold. So tell me what it's like to work with him, to go up against him in practice, and maybe kind of how you've seen him grow and change and evolve over the years and establishing himself as a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL.
Man, I love it. Sam is a competitor. Man, I guess it's just been phenomenal to get a chance to play with him in Minnesota, to come back over here, to be on the same team again. I remember the first thing he said after we got our first W in the locker room. And came up to me and said, Shaq, let's go ahead and do it again. Let's just do it again. I just love it because he's a competitor first. And one thing about it, man, he's going to continue to, bite, fight, scratch, whatever it takes to get that W. And I think that's the type of quarterback that we can get behind, a franchise quarterback that's going to help us get exactly where we need to be. And, at the end of the day, in practice, we're going to continue to get each other better. But, man, like I said, he's a true competitor. And that's the type of quarterback you need in front of your team to lead us in the right direction.
All right, your energy is palpable, so we're going to have some fun. Okay, here's the thing, bro. I don't know if you know this, but this is a real thing. Today is this is a real thing. It's called Stay Away from Seattle Day. And the whole point of today is keep the tourists away. The locals need the day off. It's just hey, stop visiting our city. We need a day off. That's a good problem to have. I'm just saying. So in honor of that, we're going to play a game. It's called Griff In or Griff Out. See what we did there? Griff In, Griff Out on some local Seattle places. So in honor of it being Stay Away from Seattle Day, let's start with the Pike Place Fish Market. Are you Griff in or Griff out on the Pike Place? Are you throwing the fish? What are we doing?
You know what? I'm Griff in. I'll throw the fish. I'll toss it. I'll definitely toss it. I'll toss it and I'll catch one if I could. I would. I'd try it. I'm Griff in on that one.
You're a braver person than I am. I don't do anything slimy or stinky and over two on the fish market. But we also have a video here for the next one, a unique pregame tradition, one of the best pregame traditions, in my opinion, for one of the best mascots in sports. So Griff in or Griff out on the Seattle Kraken having the best pregame show in professional sports.
You know what? Let's go Griffin.
I feel like you're just taking Griffin.
Love it.
I feel like you're just being pro Seattle on everything. I see what he's doing here. He's like, you know what? Never got in trouble for saying Griffin. I'm just saying. Well, what about the Space Needle? We Griff in or we Griff out on the Space? Where are we on heights? How about this? I won't make you talk about the Space Needle. Heights, Griff in or Griff out?
Griffin. I told myself one day I might try to skydive. I'm terrified, but I feel like I'm the type of person that like that type of adrenaline, that rush. I take it Griffin.
I'll have to go with you then, because it's always been like a bucket list dream thing of mine, but I'm also just too scared to do it by myself. So we'll make plans to go.
100% I'm peeing my pants. Yeah. You make me jump out of an airplane, 100% I am peeing my pants. I just want everybody to know that straight out.
That's okay.
The minute just everywhere. It's going everywhere.
Just gotta say you did.
That's okay.
I just say I did it one time. I just need to say I did it. That's all. That's all I need. Just say I did it.
Nobody needs video evidence of you peeing in your pants as you are, plummeting from a plane. You can just tell people, yeah, I did it. I wasn't even scared. It was easy. I'd do it again. No problem. Okay. The Seattle Mariners, they're on a 9-game win streak. Cal Raleigh, the big dumper, one of the most exciting home run hitters in Major League Baseball. So Griff in or Griff out, the Mariners are your future World Series champions.
Oh, Griffin, most definitely. Most definitely.
Let's go.
I love it. I'm always
Let's
rooting.
go. I love the support
right,
of Seattle professional
always.
sports teams here.
Always.
I'm going to pin him in here. I'm going to pin him in. I found a way that we can pin him in. Okay, I got this because no matter what you say to this, you're going to make somebody a little bit mad. Okay, because you played in a few spots. Okay, you've had some great moments in some great cities. So the Seahawks, best home field advantage in the NFL. Is the Seahawks home crowd the best home crowd you've ever played in front of, Griffin or Griff out?
Griffin, no doubt about it. I didn't even have to think about it. Man, I remember having moments in that stadium where I'm standing right next to a person trying to get a call or trying to give them a direction or a check, and they have no idea what I'm saying. And I'm literally 1 foot away. So, yes, it gets extremely loud in there, and it's definitely an advantage. It gets to a point where it's even hard for the defense. So, yes, Griffin, always.
I am always stunned by family members that both played in the, like, just the fact that you and your brother were NFL players to me is one of the most mind-blowing things. Like, genetics and your parents deserve so, like, y'all deserve so much credit. Like, it's amazing. I don't know what that's like, but you and your brother have teamed up. He played for 3 seasons in Seattle. Now you're teaming up to work in private aviation. So tell everybody what you guys are doing with, like, speaking of skydiving, what are we doing in private aviation?
Oh man, I feel like the main reason why we got into this aviation business is we want to create a platform for not only just guys like me, but all athletes around the world to get a chance to continue to learn how to use their name and likeness for, to get equity deals in different places. And I feel like the main reason why we got in this aviation space is because there's no one else like us in that business. And now we create an opportunity for other guys to get a chance to use their name and likeness to do the things that we love to do. We travel a lot, we move around, we have families, everything happens a lot faster. But ultimately, I'm so used to guys taking advantage of guys like us, athletes, and not sure what we could or possibly make. A lot of people just see the name and, they try to charge you any type of price. And one thing about it, man, my brother's trying to protect athletes like us and understand that we still get a chance to travel and do things that we love to do, but at a better rate. And at the end of the day, we trying to teach guys how to get equity deals to learn to use their name and likeness. And now we got a chance to compare with Kel Air, the aviation system, and get a chance to create that platform for other guys like us.
We need to get Keller like taking people private to Seahawks games all the time,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
we'll skydive together out of a Keller. I got it all figured out. Shaq,
Oh, I like that.
And then we'll
I
go
like
to the
that.
Pike Place Fish Market. We'll do a full Seattle tour.
Yeah, I like it. I like how y'all put that together. I like it.
like we're in on it, dude. Your energy is incredible, man, and it's you've always been easy to root for watching you from a distance, but having you on the show only cements that. Congratulations on all you're doing. Have a great season. We can't wait to watch you kick ass. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you guys always for having me.
Man, this is
Thank
great.
you, Gil.
I'm gonna go book a private jet for us on Keller. That's what we're gonna do. Coming up next, NFL Power Rankings. We are gonna figure out who's good, who's not, and then you're gonna disagree with all of it. It's coming up next, Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. What could go wrong? We're going to rank things. What could possibly go wrong with ranking things? Nobody has ever disagreed with any ranking in the history of anything, Caroline. So I feel like we've got this. This is going to go perfect. It will be flawless. All right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do our power rankings. I'm going to let you reveal your top 5. I will reveal my top 5, and then we'll decide why I was right. That feels like the right way to do this. I feel like that's the...
Well, we can decide if you were right or not. We can go through that. Yeah, we'll go through our process, but I will lead us off with my official NFL power rankings through 2 weeks. At 1, the Green Bay Packers. If the Green Bay Packers are not your number 1 team in the National Football League, then you are definitively wrong. And you say, well, that's just my opinion. Your opinion's wrong. The Green Bay Packers have looked like the most complete, the deepest, the most explosive team in the entire NFL, and they've done it against 2 teams that made deep playoff runs last year in the Lions and the Washington Commanders. The Green Bay Packers are my number 1 team in the NFL, followed by number 2, the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills have been explosive, though. The Buffalo Bills took care of business against the Jets like they were supposed to. They had a massive comeback win against the Ravens in the 4th quarter in week 1. Again, you beat one of the best teams in the NFL in the Ravens, and then you take care of business against one of the worst teams in the NFL against the Jets. The Bills have done what they've needed to do. Josh Allen has looked like the reigning MVP while doing it. The Bills are 2, followed by that very team that they beat in week 1, the Baltimore Ravens. I understand that we have some 2-0 teams that are behind the Baltimore Ravens who are sitting at 1-1. But the Ravens, I still think, look like one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL. They just happened to run into Josh Allen in the Buffalo Bills in week 1. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They have one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think even when he chokes in the 4th quarter with double-digit leads, I hear you, Hutton Jackson, our producer. I get it. I know. I still think John Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in the NFL. The Ravens are at 3. And I know, I see your face. I see it. They're coming. The Philadelphia Eagles are sitting at number 4. Now, just to give you a peek behind the curtain of my process, and I understand that ranking processes haven't been taken very well on social media over the past couple of weeks, I sat there and I thought, Ravens or Eagles? Ravens or Eagles? I was, doing a full Ace Ventura, Finkel and Einhorn. I didn't know who to put at 3 and who to put at 4 because both of these teams look like Super Bowl contenders. When it came down to it, I thought, okay, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry or Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. I'll take either of them, truly. There's no wrong answer there. I gave the Ravens the edge because I think that Lamar Jackson as a quarterback, purely as a quarterback, poses more of a threat than Jalen Hurts. That's not an anti-Jalen Hurts sentiment. It was very, very close. I gave the Ravens the edge. The Eagles are at 4. And rounding out my top 5, the Los Angeles Chargers. Man, that defense is nasty. And we saw it on full display last night. Justin Herbert in this passing attack, it's coming alive. The run game needs to get better. But right now, the LA Chargers have the edge in the AFC West. They have basically a 2.5 game lead on the Kansas City Chiefs. They're doing what they need to do. They're building that early season lead against a Chiefs team that is struggling. The Chargers look really complete. Yes, they could be better in certain areas, but the Chargers have looked fantastic through 2 weeks. So that is my top 5. Packers, Bills, Ravens, Eagles, and Chargers. Fitzy, you have the floor.
So you have quality lost to me. That's what you've done. You've done the College Football Playoff Committee version of a quality loss. Like when you put your rankings up there and you put the Baltimore Ravens at 3, even though they've lost a game, what you're saying is that you value their losses more than you value wins. What are you doing, Caroline Fenton? This is impossible. We cannot.
It's not just about wins and losses. How do you look in the process? The eye test, if I'd like to take my least favorite term that we use in college football playoff rankings. The eye test.
I would like to show you what the rankings were supposed to be. You are right. The Green Bay Packers are number 1. And they are number 1 because I love complimentary football, right? Like this is so easy. Right now, I think it's the best defense in the league. Right now, Jordan Love is playing like he could be an MVP candidate, by the way. I trust the heck out of Josh Jacobs running the football. They got the weapons to get what they need to get done. LaFleur, underrated as a coach at this point. Green Bay, clearly number one to me. They are complementary football, the best team in the NFL. And part of that comes because as we go to number 2, the Bills sit at number 2, even though the Bills are sexier. Like, the Bills are, like, I admit it. I get it. Like, if the Bills walk by you in the mall, you're turning around. I understand why. But the Bills also got torched in so many ways by the Ravens. I can't take that out of my mind. Like, maybe that's because the Ravens are that good. But at the end of the day, we haven't seen the Packers put on their heels like that. We have seen the Bills put on their heels. So I agonized over 1v2 because I think in some ways the Bills are just hotter than the Packers are. But the Packers are more stable, all right? So I'm going to stay in the long-term relationship with the Packers, even though the Bills look like a supermodel. At number 3...
The hot versus crazy scale is coming into effect.
It's 100%. Here. It's 100%. Number 3, this one was easy. It's Philadelphia Eagles. Because the Philadelphia Eagles can, I don't know, they can just go 4 down the entire game if they want to. Nobody can stop the tush push. And we've gotten to the point where now that this is what we're going to do every Monday on Twitter X. We're going to spend every Monday arguing whether or not guys lined up offsides or whether the refs can properly officiate the call. Like, the fact is nobody can stop it. Nobody figured, like, it doesn't matter that Jalen Hurts throws for like 8 yards. That's fine. They'll be okay anyway. They also play complementary football. A little concerned about the number 2 corner for the Eagles still. That's still stuck in my mind. And that's why we get to the Ravens at number 4, because you are right. The Ravens look better than the Eagles in every possible way. And the Ravens actually played a tougher opponent in the Bills than the Eagles have played. So I should give them credit. But the Ravens lost a game. And I care about wins and losses, all right? I am the guy that if I was an AP voter, I would not put Notre Dame in the top 25. Why? Because they are 0-2. So the Ravens picked up a loss where, you know, it was a winnable football game. To be clear, the Ravens would be at 2 if they had won that game, and the Bills would be at 4. So I keep the Eagles at 3. And then at my 5 spot, because I'm a complete fraud, I've thought about this all morning. I don't know what to do here. I will put the Chargers at the 5 spot. I'm not sure in my loins. I don't believe that the Colts are a better football team today, the way they played so far. The Colts haven't punted yet. They don't make my top 5. Nobody wanted to hear about my loins, but we do want to hear about the Colts versus the Chargers. There were portions of the Chargers last night. Like I said, I thought Justin Herbert looked great. You're right. They need to run the football better. I think this Chargers defense is nasty, but now this Chargers defense may be without Khalil Mack for a while. And what does that mean for their defense? So, I mean, if you put true serum in my veins, I think I probably could have gone either way on Colts versus Chargers. But this Caroline Fenton is the appropriate way for a top 5 to be ranked.
I did do the same thing that when I was putting my rankings together before the games last night, I put at number 5, Chargers or Colts, depending on what we see from the Chargers tonight. And call it recency bias, but it was what we saw from the Chargers last night that put them above the Colts, in my opinion. But we'll see week 7. Chargers host the Colts week 7, October 19th. We will see who is kind of that, breakout team from the AFC that week, perhaps. Daniel Jones, league MVP. You heard it here first.
I went to bed convinced it was the Chargers. I woke up convinced it was the Colts. I don't know. Which running attack do you trust more? The Eagles or the Ravens? Like Lamar or the tush push? What are we doing here?
Yes. Yes. Like, if you give me Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, like, the answer is yes. Like, I'll take just whichever one you don't take, because those are some of the scariest 1-2 punches, if not the scariest 1-2 punches in the entire National Football League. You are 100% correct that the tush push, I think, is the scariest play in football. It is undefeated. For some reason, nobody can figure out how to stop it. But like I said earlier, Lamar, just purely alone, Lamar as a passer, Lamar with what he can do out of his legs, I think independently, he himself is a bigger threat than Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has the luxury of having so many pieces around him. Maybe unfairly, we discredit him for that, but I lean the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry over Jalen Hurts and Saquon, but man, oh man, is it close.
I lean the opposite way. Saquon and Jalen Hurts together, mostly because of the 4-down territory. But you're right. The real answer to this is yes. I'm not sure. And remember, we're only 2 weeks in. So certainly we got the power rankings right. And if you disagree, you're completely wrong. Come back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We'll be right here. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thank you so much for hanging out with Yahoo Sports Daily. We'll see you tomorrow morning.